So on this channel we talk a lot about animations and how to make your own short films. And while it is all important to be able to make those things, it's also important to learn how to actually convey a story through your animations or maybe your films. So I'm making this video in order to actually highlight some problems with story writing, and I'm going to use the example of The Last of Us because there is one character that we all know and love, and that is Joel Miller. And we all know that The Last of Us 2 game got a lot of backlash for killing Joel Miller. But not only that, the TV show, when the people who are not even gamers who watched it, they gave the same response as well. And so there is some fundamental underlying problem with killing of Joel Miller. But is that really the case? Well, I need to talk about a few other characters in order to highlight what's the problem with this death. Here's the thing, I don't think that Joel Miller's death in itself is a problem. What I do think is that his death and the way it was done or executed was the problem. To justify this point, I will give you the example of another character which is very much like Joel Miller, and that is Lee. So the Lee from Walking Dead is pretty much a similar character to Joel Miller. He gets another daughter, just like a surrogate daughter to Ellie, and Lee also dies at the end of the game. In fact, he dies at the end of the first game. But the reason that Lee's death actually works and the Joel's death doesn't work is because Joel's death feels a lot more forced. Here's the thing. In case of Lee, we saw his relationship being developed with Clementine. In case of Joel, we saw the same thing as well. But in case of Joel, the problem is that his death was executed very poorly, and it was used more as a shock factor rather than actually helping to develop the story further. The example of this is because Joel Miller was killed in the second part, and in a way that makes the player feel like they were all along wrong because they somehow killed someone else's father, not even realizing that the other person might still be wrong. Just because that person had a daughter, just because that person had good relationships with their daughter, doesn't mean that that person was in the right. Abby's dad was still in the wrong to help Fireflies steal someone else's sort of a person-like daughter and not even asking both of their consent before even starting the operation. And I don't need to tell you twice. Plus, Abby all along thinks that her father was unarmed, which is wrong because her father actively stood between Joel and Ellie holding his scalpel. Another problem with the story writing of The Last of Us 2 is that Ellie always treated Joel like he was in the wrong for saving her. This is a polar opposite to Clementine. In case of Clementine, Clementine always appreciated Lee's sacrifice for her. Clementine never thought of Lee as over-controlling or over-correcting her. It's like Clementine realizes that while Lee can be harsh at times, he does that for the safety of Clementine. Whereas Ellie is always being arrogant and appalling for no reason. In the TV show of The Last of Us 2, they actually did an even worse job by making Ellie even more arrogant. And I don't know why they took that decision when they knew that this was not gonna work all along. Because let's be honest here, the hatred of gamers towards The Last of Us 2 was definitely justified. The thing is that Joel Miller was killed purely for shock value. A good story that still wanted to kill Joel Miller would have given him a proper respectful send-off. Let's be honest here, just because gamers want that male character to be alive doesn't make these gamers misogynistic, or the whole popular narrative that two female leads in the show or the game lead Ellie is something that gamers are not liking because these are women. That's not true at all. Gamers have liked women for almost ever. I don't need to give you the example of Split Fiction, which is another game that gamers have played a lot, and us gamers have made that game popular. So it's not like gamers hate female lead, we just hate bad writing. What I think is that Joel Miller's death could have been conveyed a lot better if it felt deserved. Let's say a hypothetical situation where the Last of Us 2 developers actually took inspiration from The Walking Dead. They could have actually made it so that Joel gets infected while protecting Ellie, and then he encounters Abby and he also saves Abby, or maybe another story where he tries to save Abby from the horde and gets infected in the process, and make Abby realize that this person who she all along thought was a monster not only just saved her life from a horde, but also saved her life at the expense of his own, because Joel, let's say, gets infected while saving Abby. So now, while Abby still is angry at Joel, she now has to kill him because he is infected. And let's say the story took a completely different direction where Abby still kills him, but mostly because she wanted to give him mercy. In this story, now you can make it seem like Joel actually saved Abby and he still died by the hands of Abby. And now you can continue with the story by making it seem like Ellie doesn't know that Abby actually killed Joel because of his infection, and she thinks that Abby took revenge, and so Ellie pursues her revenge towards Abby. That would have made story significantly better, and nobody would have actually, at least what I think is that nobody would have actually hated the death of Joel Miller. Because yes, he would have died, but at the same time it would have been okay. Another problem that we do realize with the Last of Us 2 game trailer was that they actually specifically manipulated the game trailer in order to make us think that Joel was going to be the main character of the story, which also makes it clear that the developers and the story writers knew it all along that his death was in fact very well undeserved. And so I don't know why they continued with that story anyways, but it was quite devastating for their own franchise, let's be honest here. In The Last of Us 2, I think the main reason Neil Druckmann killed Joel Miller is because he wanted to have a female lead. And this idea can work, but only if executed well. You can't just go out there and kill the main character of the story who is loved by everyone and you try and make him look like he is the bad person. In the TV show, in fact, in the TV show, this is highlighted even more, where Neil Druckmann specifically wrote the story in a way that he is trying to make Joel Miller look even weaker and even more bad. And I don't know why they are trying to do this. Joel Miller is supposed to be a good character, and if you want him to be replaced by a female lead, let's say by his daughter, you have to give him a respectful send-off. And if you cannot give that, then your female lead in turn will suffer because nobody will like her either. Which is why everybody hates Bella Ramsey's Ellie, or even the video game version of The Last of Us 2 Ellie. Nobody likes these characters. Whereas in case of Lee, even though Lee died, everybody still likes Clementine. Nobody hates Clementine for being the female lead of The Walking Dead in game series. In fact, I would argue that Clementine is one of the best examples of how you should write in fact a female lead. Another problem is the deceptive marketing. Now we all know that the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game came out and it was based in the Arkham universe. This also shows that just like in the trailer of The Last of Us 2, how they manipulated it to make it seem like Joel was going to be the main guy, in the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, they deliberately based that universe in the Arkham universe to capitalize on the success of the Arkham Batman universe in order to get their current game be successful. Nobody liked the Suicide Squad game anyways. And so this is the whole concept, that trying to kill these male leads who are liked by everyone, you can kill them, but you will have to give them a proper send-off. It's the same problem with the Arkham Batman. In the Suicide Squad game, Harley Quinn disrespects him so much. His death is like the most disrespectful death for a superhero. And I don't know why they give so much respect to Wonder Woman from that story, which we saw for the first time in that game. So you are trying to tell me that Arkham Batman, the universe that you are trying to capitalize on, you cannot give that Batman respect, but you give the respect to Wonder Woman, who is not even present in that universe all this time. The Last of Us has a huge potential, and the story and the background of the story has a huge potential. And this is why I am trying to correct it. This is why I think a lot of people who hate The Last of Us still want Last of Us to succeed, because they see the potential in the story. The Last of Us 1 was great. Why can you not make the succeeding games be just as good? In The Walking Dead Season 4, we thought that Clementine was going to die, and most of the people were convinced that she died, even though after the post-credits we saw that she was alive. But at the same time, even if she did die, it would have been a proper send-off. And so killing your main character is completely okay. Nobody is angry at Joel Miller's death per se, but they're angry at the disrespect of his character and how he was portrayed in the second story of The Last of Us. So that was my opinion on the story writing of The Last of Us and how you can improve your story writing. And with that said, I will see you on the next one.